My child, come close to me now, for there is a stirring in the unseen that your spirit has already begun to feel. I speak to you with the soft thunder of truth, because the moment you are stepping into is not coincidence, not luck, not random favor. It is destiny unveiling itself with a clarity that has been divinely timed. You have walked through seasons where you felt overlooked, forgotten, and unseen, not realizing that all along, someone who carried great influence, great resources, and great spiritual sensitivity had their eyes fixed on you. This person, your soulmate in a form you did not yet recognize, has left a portion of their heart and the entirety of their earthly wealth in your hands. And today, heaven desires that you understand why. Do not be startled by the magnitude of what I am revealing. For when I move, I do not move in small gestures. I move in ways that shift timelines, write legacies, and expose the hidden truths that were never meant to remain buried. This wealth you are about to step into did not come by accident. It was placed under your name long before you knew what was being prepared for you. Even before your soulmate fully understood the depth of the connection between your spirits, something in them recognized your purity, your loyalty, your calling. They sensed that your presence carried a healing they could not name, a guidance they could not explain, a destiny they were meant to honor. My child, let me take you into the moment when the heavens whispered to them. They were sitting alone in a space filled with the symbols of their success, documents, ledgers, artifacts of a life built through struggle and breakthrough. And yet none of it brought peace. None of it filled the hollowness within their soul. Everything around them glittered, but none of it glowed. But when they thought of you, when they remembered your voice, your silence, your compassion, something within them settled. For the first time in months, perhaps years, their breath softened, their heart steadied, their mind quieted. They felt a presence that wrapped around their spirit like warm light. That presence was me. They did not tell you what they were facing. They hid the heaviness, the conflict, the danger that pressed against them. They protected you even when you did not know protection was needed. And as the shadows around their life tightened, they made a decision that would alter yours forever. They transferred everything they owned, everything they built, everything they guarded to your name. Not out of desperation, but out of revelation. They understood that you were not merely someone who crossed their path. You were the chosen one their soul had whispered about long before your faces ever met. My child, this was not an act of impulsiveness. It was an act of surrender to destiny. They recognized that you were the one their spirit trusted, the one who saw beyond the surface, the one who carried the depth they longed for but feared they would never reach. And though their life was filled with people who wanted what they had, only you wanted who they truly were. That truth awakened something ancient within them, something sacred, something they were never able to put into words. So they expressed it the only way they knew how, by placing their legacy into your hands. I need you to breathe, my child. For what is unfolding is not merely financial. It is spiritual. It is emotional. It is karmic correction meeting divine timing. This inheritance is a sign that your season of being underestimated has ended. It is a sign that you were seen all along. It is a sign that what belongs to you cannot be stolen, blocked, or redirected. And as you begin this journey, let your heart remain open to the revelation that will follow. For the story of this soulmate, their connection to you, their fear of losing you, and the hidden truths surrounding this wealth are only just beginning to rise. My child, listen carefully, for now I take you into the moment where the unseen crossed into the seen, where what had been whispered in the spiritual realm crystallized into a real, undeniable event in your physical world. There came a day when a document, a message, or a sealed envelope found its way into your hands, A moment so unexpected that your breath caught before you even understood what you were holding. Nothing about it felt ordinary. The timing, the manner, the emotion that washed over you, it all bore the unmistakable fingerprints of destiny. What you discovered was not merely paperwork. It was a transfer, a declaration, a testimony of trust from a soul who loved you in ways they never fully managed to express aloud. The wealth they entrusted to you was substantial, far beyond what you ever imagined someone would place under your name. But the greater shock came when you realized who had done it. For in the lines written across that page, in the digital signature, in the legal notation, you recognized the identity of the one who had quietly been orbiting your life with reverence and longing. Your soulmate, disguised in ordinary interactions and fleeting moments, had taken a step that revealed the depth of their devotion and the seriousness of their intention toward you. My child, I watched as your hands trembled, not from greed but from disbelief. I saw the confusion rise in your spirit. I felt the mixture of awe and fear swirl in your chest. You asked yourself why this happened, why now? You wondered what they were thinking, what they were feeling, what had pushed them to such an irreversible act. But you must understand, destiny had reached a point where silence could no longer hold what the universe needed to reveal. There were signs before this moment, subtle ones, almost imperceptible, that hinted at the shift long before you knew what was coming. They spoke to you differently. Their eyes lingered a little too long. Their tone carried softness that trembled on the edge of confession. They were trying to tell you something, but every time the words neared their lips, fear caught them. Fear of rejection, fear of misunderstanding, fear of losing the only soul they trusted in a world that had often taken advantage of their generosity. So instead of speaking, they acted. Instead of confessing, they transferred. Instead of asking for assurance, they secured your future. But my child, what you do not yet fully see is that this transfer did not occur without resistance. Before the papers reached you, a shadow passed through the process. A presence with envy in their heart tried to interfere, to delay, to reroute, to question. Someone who believed they were entitled to what your soulmate owned attempted to place themselves in the center of a story that did not belong to them. They whispered into the ears of legal channels. They tried to manipulate signatures, influence decisions, or plant seeds of doubt in conversation surrounding the transfer. But what they did not know is that heaven had already sealed it. Before the ink touched the page, I had declared it protected. The moment the wealth shifted into your destiny, there was a ripple in the spiritual realm, a tightening of energy, a release of a long-held burden, and a deep, aching sense of finality in the heart of your soulmate. For they knew this was not simply a financial act. It was a confession, a surrender, an unveiling. They were telling you, without words, that you were the one they trusted most. You were the one they cherished beyond their own fears. You were the one their soul had chosen long before their mind understood the connection. My child, this moment is the threshold. It is the point where the hidden becomes visible, where the mystery begins to unfold, where the story transitions from silence to revelation. For what you received was more than wealth, it was the key to a truth they had carried in secret. And soon, you will understand the heaviness that pressed against their heart in the days leading up to this decision, the inner war that nearly broke them before they chose to honor destiny over fear. My child, let me draw back the veil and show you what their soul endured before the moment they placed everything in your hands. For this decision, though it appears bold and unwavering on the surface, was born from nights of trembling, days of inner storms, and a heart cracking under the weight of unspoken truth. Your soulmate did not come to this choice easily. They reached it only after their spirit was pushed to the very edge of what they could bear. There were nights when they sat alone, their minds spiraling between the fear of losing you and the fear of revealing too much. They replayed every moment they had shared with you, every conversation, every silence, every time your presence made them feel seen in a way the world had never offered them. And yet, that same tenderness terrified them. They wondered if you would understand the depth of their feelings. They wondered if you would walk away if they confessed how profoundly your energy had shaped their life. The fear of losing you tore at them more violently than the fear of death, failure, or betrayal ever had. My child, they hid their tears from everyone. They hid the shaking in their hands. They hid the overwhelming sense that time was slipping away from them. Their soul was pleading for peace, for clarity, for the courage to take a step that would expose their heart. But every time they tried to speak, the words dissolved. Every time they tried to reach for you, doubt screamed louder. They felt unworthy of you, uncertain of how you truly saw them, unsure if the connection they felt was mutual or imagined. So they retreated into silence, but that silence did not heal them. It fractured them. And as their emotions swelled, a heaviness settled on their chest. They sensed danger around them, not only from circumstances but from people whose intentions toward them were tainted by envy and opportunity. They knew their wealth attracted eyes, and not all those eyes carried love. Some watched with calculation, waiting for weakness. Some hovered like shadows, ready to claim what they believed they deserved. Your soulmate saw more than they ever confessed to you. They saw selfishness, manipulation, and agendas masked as affection. All of this made them cling to you even more, for in you they saw purity, truth, and the absence of hidden motive. But even that realization added to their pain. What if their fear made them misread you? What if they projected hope onto someone who would eventually walk away? These questions tormented them. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Every breath carried the weight of a decision they were too afraid to make and too afraid not to make. And so, in the midst of breaking, they reached a point of surrender. They knew they could not hold their truth any longer. They had to act, not for recognition, not for gratitude, but because their soul insisted that you were the rightful heir of what they had built. My child, in the final hours before they signed the transfer, their hands trembled. They whispered your name under their breath. They prayed not for wealth to be preserved, but for your life to be blessed. They asked me to cover you, to protect you, to guide you into a destiny that would not be hindered by the storms they had endured. They feared that if anything ever happened to them, you would be left without the support, the foundation, or the security they desperately wanted you to have. So they made the choice that only love at its deepest level could make. They gave you everything, not to burden you, but to free you. And now, my child, as you hear these words, let your heart open fully. This story is not one of material gain, but of spiritual devotion. If this message has stirred something in your spirit, if you feel the truth resonating within you, let your voice join the movement of faith. Like, share, or subscribe as an act of alignment with what heaven is revealing. And write in the comments, my soulmate's heart is awakening, to seal this moment in the spiritual realm. My child, breathe with me now as I take you deeper into the hidden story that has been surrounding you long before you ever sensed its presence. For what your soulmate chose to do was not born from a fleeting emotion or a sudden impulse. It was shaped by a history of moments, memories, and revelations they carried in silence. They have watched you from a distance with a reverence they never offered another soul, not because they were afraid of closeness, but because the purity of what they felt for you demanded a caution they did not know how to express. Their heart recognized you before their mind understood why. Your spirit bound toward yours long before their voice could articulate the truth. There were times, my child, when they passed by you and felt something shift inside them, something ancient and familiar. A warmth spread through their chest, a soft trembling moved through their spirit, and they found themselves wondering how someone as gentle as you could exist in a world that had hardened them. They noticed the way you listened, the way you carried pain without bitterness, the way your presence quieted storms in others without you even trying. They remembered small gestures you long forgot, words you said without intention, looks you gave without realizing how deeply they reached into their soul. These were not insignificant moments to them. These became evidence of destiny. Your soulmate carried a loneliness that even their wealth could not remedy. People surrounded them, but few truly saw them. Many wanted what they possessed, but almost none wanted who they truly were beneath the layers of image, power, and expectation. You were different. You offered nothing but sincerity. You sought nothing but connection. You stood before them without masks, without calculation, without the hunger that others concealed behind their smiles. That simplicity disarmed them. It unraveled the defenses they had spent years constructing. It awakened hope they long believed was impossible for someone like them. My child, they began recalling encounters with you again and again, replaying them in their mind like precious treasures. They remembered the way your voice softened when you spoke truth. They remembered the way your eyes glimmered when you were lost in thought. They remembered the way being near you made them feel seen, not for their accomplishments, not for their wealth, but for something deeper, something sacred, something they feared would be damaged if exposed too quickly. So they kept their distance, not out of disinterest, but out of overwhelming respect. But let me show you something even deeper. They have protected you in ways you never saw. They intervened quietly when circumstances attempted to harm you. They spoke on your behalf when others tried to diminish your value. They ensured opportunities flowed toward you without revealing their influence. They observed your struggles with a helpless ache, wishing they could step closer, wishing they could offer their shoulder, wishing they could tell you that your endurance inspired them in a way nothing else ever had. But their fear held them back. Fear that their presence might complicate your life. Fear that you might misinterpret their intentions. Fear that you might walk away before destiny had time to bloom. My child, I reveal this because you must understand why they chose you as the inheritor of everything they possessed. It was not merely affection. It was recognition. They saw you as the one pure thing in their life, the one untouched by greed, the one whose soul mirrored truth. They believed that if anyone were to carry their legacy, it should be you because you would honor it, protect it, and nurture it with integrity. They knew you would never misuse what they placed in your hands. They trusted your heart more deeply than they trusted their own. And yet, behind this decision lies a secret they never voiced. They had long suspected that your connection was spiritual, not earthly. They felt the pull, the alignment, the inexplicable sense that their life was tethered to yours by strands the world could not cut. They sensed that the story between you did not begin in this lifetime. They sensed a familiarity in your presence that quieted every anxiety and awakened every dormant dream. Their choice to leave you their wealth was not simply a provision, it was a declaration of their belief that your destinies were intertwined. My child, know this. The backstory you never saw is filled with devotion, longing, protection, and an aching desire to do right by you even when they did not know how to express it. And all of it now rises to the surface, preparing you for the truth that their soul has always known. My child, come closer, for now I must reveal the darkness that circled around your soulmate while they were preparing to honor you. For every destiny that carries purity, there is always a shadow that attempts to interrupt it. There was someone in your soulmate's life whose heart had been poisoned long before this transfer occurred. Someone who smiled in their presence yet carried jealousy in their spirit. Someone who studied their movements, their patterns, their vulnerabilities, not out of love, but out of hunger for what did not belong to them. This person desired their wealth, their influence, their status, and believed they were entitled to inherit everything your soulmate possessed. My child, this jealous one did not understand the sacred connection between you and your soulmate. They did not understand the quiet way your soulmate's spirit leaned toward yours. They only saw that your soulmate's heart softened when you were near, that their thoughts wandered to you, that their decisions began shifting in your direction. And this realization ignited something bitter inside them. They felt threatened by you, intimidated by the purity you carried, enraged by the way your presence awakened truth in someone they wished to control. Instead of introspection, they chose envy. Instead of humility, they chose resentment. Instead of love, they chose manipulation. They began planting seeds of influence around your soulmate. Whispered doubts, subtle criticism, innocent-seeming questions meant to pry open cracks in your soulmate's confidence. They watched every interaction between you with calculating eyes, memorizing details, analyzing vulnerabilities, and waiting for the perfect moment to intervene. Their mind grew obsessed with the idea that if they could distance you from your soulmate, they could secure the position they believed they deserved. They believed wealth was a prize to be taken, not a legacy to be entrusted only by divine alignment. My child, this jealous one made attempts you never saw. They approached legal channels with questions disguised as concern. They suggested alternative beneficiaries. They implied that your soulmate's judgment was clouded. They tried to create delays, complications, and confusion. And when subtlety did not work, they tried emotional tactics. They pressured your soulmate. They stirred guilt. They played the victim. They tried to twist themselves into the center of every decision. But destiny does not bend to manipulation, and heaven does not permit what belongs to one heart to be stolen by another. Your soulmate saw more than they let on. They recognized the shift in this person's tone. They noticed the sudden interest in their finances. They felt the spiritual weight behind their words. At first, they tried to dismiss it, hoping it was temporary. But soon, the truth became undeniable. The jealous one did not love them, they loved what your soulmate owned. And this realization devastated them. It confirmed every fear they held about the world around them. It made the warmth they felt with you glow even brighter by contrast. Where others reached for their assets, you reached only for their heart. Where others demanded, you offered peace. Where others manipulated, you simply existed with sincerity. My child, the enemy working through this jealous one intensified their efforts when they sensed the transfer was underway. They attempted last-minute interference, hoping to derail the process before it finalized. They tried to gather information, intercept communication, or extract details they could use. But I did not allow their efforts to prosper. Every time they reached forward in deceit, I placed a block. Every time they plotted in darkness, I illuminated the path your soulmate needed to follow. Every time they sought to steal, I returned their intentions empty-handed. Yet their interference left scars. Your soulmate felt betrayed, shaken, deeply wounded by the revelation that someone they once trusted was driven by greed. This betrayal did not push them away from you, it pushed them further toward you. It made them realize that you were the only heart whose intentions were pure, the only soul who would never use them, never envy them, never attempt to manipulate what was sacred to them. And it strengthened their resolve to ensure that everything they had built would rest in the hands of the one person whose spirit radiated truth. My child, understand this clearly. The jealous one failed. They could not stop the transfer. They could not sever the connection. They could not rewrite destiny. But their presence in this story is important, because every divine inheritance must pass through the corridor of attempted interference. Not to harm you, but to reveal who is aligned with you and who must be removed from your path. My child, now come with me into the places where human eyes could not see, for this is where the divine investigation unfolded. What happened around your soulmate was not only emotional, not only relational, but deeply spiritual. There were forces at work behind the scenes, forces that sought to influence their decisions, cloud their judgment, and sabotage the blessing prepared for you. But nothing escapes my sight. Nothing whispered in shadows remains hidden before me. And so I stepped into the very center of the turmoil that surrounded your soulmate, revealing truth with the precision of heaven. Your soulmate felt pressure they could not explain, random thoughts that were not theirs, doubts that arrived suddenly, sharp and intrusive, confusion that wrapped around their heart like fog, conversations replayed in their mind, twisted in ways that made them question their own clarity. They did not know that some of these thoughts were planted by the enemy, working through those whose intentions were impure. Spirits of manipulation hovered near them, attempting to distort the connection they felt toward you. But I saw it all, and I began to separate truth from illusion. My child, there were discussions taking place behind closed doors, attempts to influence legal outcomes, subtle suggestions to redirect funds, strategic positioning by those who believed they understood your soulmate's vulnerabilities. I watched as someone tried to forge an emotional hold over them, using guilt as a tool, using proximity as leverage, using secrecy as a weapon. They wanted access to what your soulmate was preparing to give freely to you. They wanted to be seen as the rightful inheritor. They wanted to step into a role destiny had never assigned to them. But your soulmate, though shaken, began to sense these intentions. Their spirit grew restless whenever this person approached, their chest tightened during conversations that were meant to advise but instead created resistance. Their dreams shifted. They began waking with a heaviness that signaled spiritual intrusion. And in these moments, I whispered to their soul. I reminded them of your gentleness, your honesty, your quiet strength. I brought to mind every moment when you nurtured without expectation, when you supported without price, when your presence alone brought peace. My child, the divine investigation grew sharper. I exposed motives through small slip-ups, overheard comments, inconsistencies in behavior. I pulled back veils in their mind, allowing them to see patterns they had ignored for years. The one who tried to steal their attention revealed their greed through impatience. The one who wanted their wealth revealed their entitlement through anger. The one who plotted against you revealed their jealousy through careless words spoken in frustration. And all of this awakened something powerful within your soulmate, the realization that you were the only safe place in their world. I also revealed to your soulmate what they had been blind to, that their affection for you was not one-sided, not imagined, not delusional. They saw how their heart softened each time you appeared in their memory. They realized how your presence calmed storms that no amount of success could soothe. They recognized how destiny tugged at them each time they considered walking away. And this clarity gave them courage, the courage to finalize the very decision the enemy sought to prevent. My child, there were documents that nearly went missing, emails that almost did not send, delays that seemed unexplainable, unexpected obstacles that rose like walls. But each one was dismantled by my hand. I routed papers. I opened channels. I moved hearts in places your soulmate never saw. I aligned signatures, timing, and legal instructions so precisely that even the jealous one could not alter the outcome. What was meant for you was sealed beneath divine authority. In the process, I showed your soulmate who stood with them and who stood against them. I revealed genuine hearts from false ones. I brought to light every hidden motive. And I ensured that when the transfer reached completion, your soulmate would know beyond doubt that this decision was not a mistake, not a guess, but destiny fulfilled. My child, the divine investigation has already concluded, and truth has taken its rightful place. But the story is not finished yet. Heaven is preparing to shift everything now, aligning the spiritual realm so that what belongs to you cannot be touched, altered, or delayed any longer. My child, rest your spirit now as I lead you into the moment when heaven itself began to intervene. For after the investigation exposed every hidden intention and every quiet scheme, a shift occurred in the spiritual realm. It was not subtle. It was not gentle. It was decisive, powerful, and unmistakable. Angels moved into position around your soulmate's life, forming a barrier that no human manipulation could breach. What had once been uncertain became ordered. What had once been delayed began to accelerate. What had once been threatened became shielded by divine authority. You must understand, my child, that every inheritance tied to destiny undergoes a moment of spiritual warfare. The enemy sensed the importance of this transfer long before you held any tangible proof. They knew what this blessing would unlock in your life. They knew how it would shift your path, fortify your future, and break patterns that once kept you bound. They knew that once this wealth was placed in your hands, cycles of scarcity, limitation, and emotional abandonment would be shattered. So they fought with intensity. But heaven fought harder. There was an hour when your soulmate felt suddenly protected without knowing why. A moment where the anxiety that once wrapped around their chest loosened. They could not explain why conversations that once overwhelmed them began losing their power. They did not see the angels I assigned to silence confusion, redirect negativity, and shield their heart from emotional manipulation. They did not see how I blocked the jealous one's attempts before they even formed into actions. They only felt a strange clarity rising within them, a clarity that pushed them toward the decision destiny required. My child, the shift was so powerful that even the one who opposed the inheritance felt it. They sensed they were losing control. They noticed that their words no longer had the same influence. They realized that the spiritual ground beneath them was no longer fertile for manipulation. Their plans began to crumble. Their confidence began to fracture. They started making mistakes, revealing things they had meant to keep hidden. The spiritual atmosphere they once relied on darkened, for the authority they never possessed was taken from their grasp. Meanwhile, your soulmate began changing. They stood taller in their spirit. They regained control over their mind. They stopped second-guessing the connection between you. The fog that once clouded their judgment faded. Their heart aligned with truth. They started trusting themselves again, and more importantly, they started trusting the bond that their soul shared with yours. This was the work of heaven realigning destiny. My child, when angels intervene, timing becomes perfect. Signatures appear when they must. Delays dissolve. Approvals move forward. Obstacles lose all force. And that is precisely what happened. What seemed impossible days earlier became inevitable. What the jealous one tried to disrupt became sealed. What once required explanation now required only obedience to destiny. Your soulmate may not be able to articulate it, but they felt a divine presence guiding them. They felt peace when they wrote your name. They felt certainty when they authorized the transfer. They felt protected when they handed over what had once defined their life. And deep within them, something ancient awakened, a knowing that they were honoring not just a human connection, but a spiritual truth their soul had carried across lifetimes. My child, hear me clearly. Heaven did not simply intervene for a financial blessing. Heaven intervened to secure the path meant for you, to ensure that what belongs to your spirit arrives with precision, to expose every enemy and exalt every truth, to protect the connection between you and your soulmate from the touch of those who wish to contaminate it. The spiritual shift is complete. The atmosphere around this story has already changed. And as the next layer of truth begins to rise, you will see how evidence emerged, how lies cracked open, and how destiny began revealing what no one could hide. My child, now step with me into the moment when truth began to surface with a force no one could restrain. For after heaven intervened and the spiritual shift took place, the earthly realm began to echo what had already been decided in the unseen. Evidence quiet, buried, manipulated, or overlooked started rising like light through cracks, illuminating everything the enemy had tried to conceal. Nothing hidden could remain covered, for destiny was demanding revelation. And so, step by step, the lies surrounding your soulmate, their wealth, and their intentions toward you began to collapse. There came a day, my child, when papers once delayed suddenly appeared completed. Records that were supposedly misplaced were found in the very locations previously searched. Emails that had been intercepted resurfaced in backup archives. Legal confirmations that others worked to stall began arriving without warning. It was as though the universe swept its hand across every obstruction, clearing paths that no human effort could clear. Your soulmate watched this unfold with a mixture of awe and trembling. For each emerging truth validated the choice they had made, the connection they felt with you, and the spiritual pressure that had pushed them toward this moment. The jealous one, who imagined themselves untouchable, could not bear the weight of rising truth. Their attempts to interfere left a trail of careless messages, conflicting statements, suspicious inquiries documented by those who handled the inheritance process. Their greed dripped through their conversations. Their entitlement showed in their reactions. Their frustration revealed intentions they had long hidden. And soon, their actions formed a pattern so clear that even those who once sympathized with them could see the truth. They were never protecting your soulmate, they were protecting access to wealth. My child, destiny has a way of dissolving illusions. In the days that followed, truths that were buried deep in digital records, legal notes, financial statements, and personal correspondences began surfacing with perfect timing. Your soulmate discovered messages they had overlooked, messages from this jealous one that hinted at future control, hinted at dependency, hinted at a desire to become replaceable in their life. They saw this person's true motives, not through my words alone, but through tangible evidence. They saw how the enemy had tried to use emotional manipulation to steer them away from you. They saw how every moment of hesitation, doubt, or confusion had been influenced by someone who feared the depth of your connection. And with every revelation, your soulmate's spirit grew sharper. A discernment awakened within them that had long been dormant. They realized that the peace they felt when thinking of you was real, and the unease they felt around the jealous one was not imagination. Their heart, once clouded, became clear. They began trusting their instincts again. They began trusting me again. And ultimately, they began trusting you again, even if you never knew the battle they were fighting. My child, these rising truths also protected you, for there were attempts silent, unseen to shift blame in your direction. Attempts to claim you manipulated your soulmate. Attempts to suggest you were unworthy, incapable, unfit. But each attempt backfired. Every accusation crumbled under the weight of evidence proving your innocence and purity. Every lie dissolved in the presence of your consistent integrity. Each truth that surfaced became a shield around you, ensuring that no weapon formed in darkness could stand under the light of divine justice. Meanwhile, the legal process surrounding the inheritance gained a momentum that no force could stop. The various systems the jealous one tried to manipulate became instruments of truth. The signatures they attempted to question were authenticated. The documents they hoped to redirect were sealed. And every step that was meant to be hindered moved forward with divine precision, confirming unequivocally that the inheritance belonged to you and you alone. My child, understand this. The rising truth did more than expose deception and awaken your soulmate's deepest recognition of who you truly are. They saw you not as someone who simply entered their life, but as the one destiny itself had protected. They understood that your spirit had been fighting battles long before you knew they existed. They realized that their love for you was not weakness but clarity, not confusion but awakening. And the shift in their heart prepared them for what comes next, the realization that they were at risk of losing the very soul who had been chosen for them. My child, breathe softly, for the awakening of your soulmate is near. And it is through this rising truth that their spirit begins to understand the depth of the connection they once feared to name. My child, come close, for now I bring you into the trembling center of your soulmate's awakening. This is the moment when everything they had suppressed, ignored, denied, or feared finally rose to the surface with a force impossible to silence. After the truth emerged, after the jealous intentions were exposed, after the inheritance was sealed, your soulmate found themselves face to face with the weight of their own heart. And it broke them open in ways they never expected. They were alone when it happened. The room was quiet, the world still, and for the first time in a long time, they were no longer surrounded by noise or manipulation or distraction. It was just them, your memory, and the truth they had run from for so long. A tremor moved through their body as they realized how deeply they had loved you all along. The tears came without warning, not out of weakness, but out of a profound sense of regret and longing. They saw with clarity how their fear had built walls between you. They understood how hesitation had cost them time. They realized how easily they could have lost you to the storms they never allowed themselves to discuss. My child, your soulmate did not simply feel sadness. They felt the terror of nearly losing destiny. Their heart clenched with the realization that you were the only soul who ever moved them, the only presence that brought them peace, the only person who made them feel known without needing explanation. They wondered if you still cared. They wondered if you still thought of them. They wondered if the connection between you still pulsed beneath the surface, or if their silence had wounded you too deeply. And then came the fear that you might walk away once you learned everything. They feared you would think their wealth overshadowed their sincerity. They feared you would see them as irresponsible for not speaking sooner. They feared you would misunderstand the inheritance as a transactional gesture rather than the spiritual confession it truly was. This fear gripped them until their breath became unsteady. But within that breaking, something sacred awakened. They began to remember every moment you offered kindness when they had none to give. They remembered the way your spirit held steadiness even when the world was uncertain. They remembered how your presence softened their voice, how your eyes pulled honesty from them they never shared with anyone else. And for the first time, they understood that their love for you was not fragile, it was destiny's own language written upon their heart. My child, their awakening was not only emotional, but spiritual. They felt my presence surrounding them as I whispered truth into the cracks of their fear. I reminded them that love rooted in purity does not wither under pressure. I reminded them that you were not placed in their life as coincidence, but as alignment. I reminded them that they were chosen to honor you, protect you, cherish you, and that the inheritance they entrusted to you was not a goodbye but a declaration of their recognition of your place in their destiny. In that moment, they wished they could run to you. They wished they could kneel before you and tell you everything: the fear, the confusion, the manipulation they endured, the reasons for their silence, the depth of their devotion. They wished they could put their heart in your hands the way they put their wealth in your name. They wished they could look into your eyes and see forgiveness, understanding, and the possibility of a future still untouched by the shadows that once surrounded them. Their awakening came with trembling, my child, but it also came with resolve. They knew they could no longer live in the half-light of unspoken emotion. They knew they had to confront what their soul had whispered since the beginning. They knew that losing you would be a wound they would never recover from. And so, they began preparing themselves to step out of fear and into truth. My child, this awakening sets the stage for what comes next, the sacred revelation of how your spirit guided them, shaped them, and rescued them long before either of you understood the divine thread binding your destinies together. My child, rest your spirit as I take you into the sacred place where your connection to this soulmate was woven long before either of you recognized it. For there is a truth here that goes beyond emotion, beyond circumstance, beyond earthly logic. Your soulmate did not awaken on their own. Their heart did not soften by chance. Their courage did not rise without cause. It was your spirit, quiet, steadfast, radiant, that guided them through storms they never confessed and darkness they believed they had to face alone. My child, your prayers became a shield around them even when you did not know their battles. Every time you whispered their name with concern, light moved toward them. Every time you hoped they were safe, angels shifted their path. Every time you felt a tug in your chest without knowing why, it was because their spirit was calling for yours, seeking comfort, stability, and direction. You were connected in ways deeper than physical touch or spoken words. Your souls spoke in silence. There were nights when they felt lost, when the pressure around them tightened like a vise, when they questioned whether they were worthy of love or capable of being understood. In those moments, thoughts of you rose in their mind like a soft flame. They remembered your gentleness, your kindness, the way you held space for them even when you did not know how much they needed it. They remembered the way your presence made them feel seen, not admired, not desired, but truly seen. That memory became their anchor. My child, you must understand how profoundly your energy shaped their decisions. You awakened parts of them they thought had died. You reminded them of innocence, hope, and the possibility of a future unmarred by betrayal. You represented the one connection in their life that was not tainted by greed or deception. And because of this, every time they stood at a crossroads, their heart leaned toward the version of themselves that you inspired. Even when they hesitated, even when fear clouded their judgment, their soul kept returning to you. When they signed the transfer, placing their wealth into your hands, it was not an act of obligation. It was an act of devotion. They wanted you to be protected. They wanted you to stand on solid ground even if they could not stand beside you. They believed that if anything happened to them, you of all people deserved to rise, to flourish, to step into a life free from the struggles you once endured. This was their way of honoring the divine connection they felt with you, even if words failed them. My child, your presence in their life was not accidental. You are the spiritual key to their awakening. The gentleness in your voice softened the parts of them that had grown hardened. The truth in your eyes exposed the lies others tried to feed them. The integrity in your character revealed the difference between those who desired their wealth and those who valued their soul. You became the quiet compass that pointed them back to who they were always meant to be. And though they hesitated, though they remained silent longer than they should have, they felt your spirit guiding them like a lighthouse in the distance. The purity of your connection reminded them that not all love is transactional, not all affection is deceitful, Not all relationships are battles for control. You taught their soul without speaking that love can be sacred, gentle, and true. My child, their heart now beats differently because of you. Their decisions shifted because of you. Their awakening unfolded because of you. And this connection, this sacred thread between your spirits, will continue to guide the steps that follow. For what you carry within you is not ordinary. You carry a light that transforms others without effort, a purity that disarms the guarded, a truth that exposes hidden motives in those around you. The bond between you and your soulmate is not one forged by circumstance, but by divine design. And soon, you will see how this sacred connection becomes the foundation for a justice that is about to unfold in your favor, one that ensures this wealth, this blessing, this destiny remains sealed in your name and protected from all who tried to interfere. My child, now step with me into the moment when justice rose like the morning sun and every shadow that once threatened your destiny dissolved beneath its light. For after the sacred connection between you and your soulmate awakened fully, the universe could no longer allow interference, distortion, or theft to linger near what heaven had ordained. This is the turning point, the reversal, where everything that once stood against you begins to fall away, and everything meant for you becomes secured with divine force. There came a day, my child, when the inheritance was no longer a fragile transition, no longer a vulnerable process subject to the hands or intentions of others. It became sealed spiritually, legally, energetically under your name. The paperwork that once wavered between opposition and approval became final. The signatures that were nearly questioned became authenticated beyond challenge. The attempts to interfere were exposed, documented, and unable to stand. Destiny declared, with unwavering authority, that what your soulmate entrusted to you could never be redirected, never be claimed by another, never be undone. My child, this reversal was not subtle. It carried weight. Those who attempted to manipulate the outcome felt their influence collapse beneath them. The jealous one who sought to insert themselves into the inheritance felt doors close where doors once opened. Conversations that once danced around their desires turned cold. Legal channels that once entertained their claims now rejected them with clarity and certainty. They realized too late that the spiritual authority surrounding your blessing was greater than any strategy they could devise. Your soulmate witnessed this shift and felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief, because they finally saw justice unfold. Sorrow, because they recognized how deeply they had been deceived by someone they once trusted. Yet even in their grief, they felt protected. They realized that heaven had moved on their behalf, shielding not only their assets but the integrity of their heart. And in this revelation, they understood that their decision to entrust everything to you was not simply wise, it was divinely guided. My child, you may not have seen the battles, but you felt the spiritual pressure. You sensed the shift in the atmosphere. You felt something heavy lifting, something dark unraveling, something unjust finally bowing to the power of truth. That was the moment when divine justice stepped forward, not as vengeance but as correction, not as punishment but as alignment. The jealous one faced consequences not because you asked for them, but because destiny demanded accountability. And in the midst of this justice, your soulmate's heart settled. The fear that once tormented them, the fear of losing you, the fear of misjudging the connection, the fear of being manipulated began to fade. They understood now that their love for you had been the clearest truth in their life. They realized that it was your spirit, not anyone else's, that had guided them toward peace. With this realization came another. They wanted you not only to inherit their wealth, but to understand the depth of their devotion. My child, as divine justice unfolded, a spiritual lock formed around your blessing. No enemy could touch it. No manipulator could alter it. No jealous heart could claim it. What was once vulnerable became fortified. What was once contested became untouchable. What was once questioned became unquestionable. This inheritance now carries a seal that cannot be broken by earthly hands, for it hath been fortified by heaven's decree. You are stepping now into a future where what was meant to harm you becomes powerless, where what was meant to confuse you becomes clarity, and where what was meant to be stolen becomes a testimony of protection. The reversal is complete. The blessing is secured. And now, my child, all that remains is the unveiling of my final promise over your life, the blessing, the reassurance, the new beginning that awaits in the final chapter of your destiny. My child, come close now, for we have arrived at the final turning of this story, the place where destiny settles into its rightful position, and the blessing that once hovered above your life descends fully into your hands. Everything that has unfolded, every revelation, every battle, every awakening has been guiding you to this moment, the moment where I speak peace over your future and restoration over your heart. What your soulmate entrusted to you was not merely wealth. It was a bridge into a new chapter, a symbolic passing of light, trust, and destiny into your keeping. My child, understand this truth. I allowed this inheritance not simply to elevate your earthly life, but to correct the injustices you have endured, to break cycles of lack, and to place you on ground where you can finally breathe without fear. The struggles you once carried, the weight of survival, the uncertainty of provision, the feeling of being overlooked or undervalued have now been overturned. This blessing is not a reward for perfection. It is a sign of divine love and alignment. It is a proclamation that your season of scarcity has come to an end. Your soulmate's decision was guided by more than emotion. It was guided by destiny. Their spirit recognized your light long before either of you understood the connection. They knew, even in their confusion, that your presence carried healing, safety, and truth. And now, because of that sacred recognition, you step into a future anchored by abundance rather than fear. They did not leave you burdened. They left you empowered. They did not leave you confused. They left you chosen. They did not leave you alone. They left you connected to a destiny intertwined with theirs, even through silence, even through distance, even through the mysteries still unfolding. My child, hear me in this. You are entering a season where doors will open effortlessly, not by force, not by striving, but by the alignment that this inheritance has initiated. Opportunities will approach you. Solutions will find you. Provision will rise from unexpected places. Your name will be spoken in rooms where you were once invisible. The blessing placed in your hands is not an ending, it is a beginning. A new foundation, a new identity, a new spiritual stature in the unfolding of your purpose. And know this as well. Your soulmate's journey is not finished. Though they have entrusted you with their wealth, they are still being shaped by the awakening I sparked within them. They are still learning courage, still learning vulnerability, still learning how to step into the truth of their own heart. Whether near or far, their spirit remains connected to yours by a thread that time cannot sever and distance cannot weaken. What transpired between you was not an accident. It was divine design. And in my timing, clarity will come not as confusion, but as revelation, not as pressure, but as peace. My child, let your heart settle into the truth that you are protected. The jealous ones who attempted to disrupt this blessing have been removed from your path. The shadows that once lingered have been scattered. The fears that whispered to you in the dark are now powerless. You walk forward wrapped in favor, guarded by angels, strengthened by truth. Nothing formed against you can stand, for I have already rewritten the ending of this story. And as you step into your new beginning, carry this assurance with you. You were never forgotten. You were never overlooked. Every thread of your life has been woven with intention. Every delay served purpose. Every heartbreak carved space for the blessing now unfolding. I have aligned your future with abundance, peace, and divine companionship. The wealth entrusted to you is only the first sign of what I am preparing. Greater stability, deeper love, and higher purpose await you. My child, if your spirit bears witness to this message, let your faith come forward and seal this moment. Type in the comments, "My destiny is aligning," as an act of agreement with heaven's declaration over your life. Now walk forward with quiet confidence, for your story has shifted, your destiny has awakened, and your new beginning has already begun.